All right. So talk a little bit about your Stanford education.
Sure. So I feel that my Stanford education has been absolutely phenomenal. It's prepared me for not only university, but for life as a whole. I've had many experiences where I've been supported time and time again by my peers and my teachers, and I honestly wouldn't change a thing about my experience here. I'm not going to lie, Stanford isn't perfect. There are a lot of aspects of the school that could be improved, but that's exactly why I chose to stay, even when I had the chance to move to other international schools in Singapore. For me, it's really been about opportunity. The one factor that has really stood out to me in my journey here has been the ability provided to students to run their own initiatives and receive support from administration. The culture here, it's supportive, it's inclusive, and it's fresh. We're a new school, which means that students have all the more influence in the direction that the school will take. When I think of my Stanford education, I think about the teachers who were willing to go above and beyond and help clarify my doubts in class or outside of class hours. The students who would help me with my work without hesitation. But I also recognize the impact that my extracurriculars have had in
Mm.
shaping my character, my passions, and my social skills. I mean, sure, we learn about mindfulness, leadership, and productivity and advisory, our classes, in external workshops, but one cannot meaningfully engage with these concepts unless they put them to use in practical situations. We need the opportunity to experience failure, to then embrace it, and then be able to grow from it. And that's what we mean when we're talking about these things like courage, adaptability, resilience,
Mm.
and adopting a growth mindset.
So let's unpack what you said a little bit. So you talked about Stanford being fresh, being young, students having opportunity. I'm curious if you're thinking of MUN or something else as you talk about that. And
Yep.
I'm curious if that's because you're a go-getter and you have initiative and you had ideas.
Mhm.
Would other people say that Stanford offers that opportunity? Was that because of you or because of Stanford or both?
I think students have ideas. Um, Sometimes it's that they're a bit scared. They're maybe fearful that those ideas won't be accepted, or they're not willing to put in the time, etc. Things like that. Um, you know, when I think about my journey in specific, I've always been this very academically motivated student. But when I think back to the type of person that I was when I first joined Stanford, compared to who I am now, those experiences in my extracurriculars were the ones that really shaped me and allowed me to grow. I was that typical introverted, shy nerd, just wanting to score perfectly in all his tests. But then as my seniors began to motivate me into leadership and told me to push myself and take on leadership roles, then I started working with others, and then I had to practice compromise, and all those things began to happen. So then I internalized these thoughts of like collaboration, cooperation, empathy, etc. Um, and so I think students do have the ideas, but sometimes they feel as if though, you know, is it really going to work? Is it going to happen? And so I think we need to change this mindset that certain students have and allow them to embrace failure. It's okay to fail. I had initiatives that didn't work out, but look at where we've come. So
And and do you think that students have the opportunity at Stanford to go for it and create new initiatives? And you seem to imply that in your first answer that Stanford was like in the United States context, it might be the Wild West, where it was this unexplored land and it was new, and you could go and create a new life for yourself if you went west. And so I'm curious, if you see that Stanford has offered that to a lot of students, or whether that was unique to your context.
I do think some experiences have been unique to my context. But Stanford is definitely a very open and it's a place where students can bring up new initiatives and they have the opportunity to do so. Um, I it's been quite a journey, I think, these past 6 years. There have been some instances where I felt, oh, this is not the right time, and other instances where it's just flowed naturally. And so I feel like we're doing a better job, especially now with initiatives from the student council, where students are able to create their clubs, and these processes are more outlined. I do feel as if though in the past, there were smaller groups of people who knew how to go about doing these things, but now it's getting a bit more streamlined, and I appreciate that.
So when you think back, is it 6 years at Stanford?
Yes.
Wow, good for you. When you think back on, particularly in high school, and you think about moments that are highlights for you, both in terms of extracurriculars, and I imagine MUN is one of those, and in class, can you give me a couple of examples and tell me what led to that being a highlight for you?
Sure. Grade 10. It was a tough year. And I think that's why it is a highlight. And it was the time, it goes without saying that SAISman and MUN have been a highlight of my Stanford journey. But grade 10 was the year when we really took a giant leap forward. We had just hosted CSAC MUN, the 11th annual session of CSAC MUN in 2018. And we decided it was time to create our own MUN conference as a standalone, SAIS conference. And to say the least, the odds were stacked against us because there were schools that had been running MUN programs for 15 years and had MUN integrated into their curriculums. And so for us to come in as kind of an underdog, a new competitor, it was hard. But we were willing to put the effort in. And so there was a lot of research, a lot of cold emailing, a lot of time that was invested. I mean, these past 3 years, I've probably spent 800 hours just on SAISman.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was a rocky road, but we were willing to put in the effort, and so it kind of just happened. We just made it happen.
So when you think about that, was when you think about MUN and your leadership there, what was the biggest growth for you? Was it kind of organizing a conference and all of the logistics and thinking and planning behind that? Or was it the content of engaging in this thing called Model United Nations and the learning that you did in collaboration with others and the friendships that came out of that? Or was it all of the above?
A bit of both, I guess. I think there are certain skills, the logistical planning, the communications, that all comes with it. But more so, it's been for me at least, working with others and trusting them. And there were quite a few events that happened that year. But for me, it was mainly being able to trust others and allow them to do the work, because I was prone to doing all the work myself. And this is something that I've come to learn over the past 3 years, that you don't have to do everything. There are people who are willing to help out, and they're just as passionate as you are. They might not have the same skills, but that's when you need to work as a team and really, I at least for me, it was, let's hone in on everyone's unique skills. If someone is good at graphic design, then they should be the ones doing that. And then if someone's good at conference management, they should be the one that's doing that. And that's when we really broke up departments and then had specific roles for each person and really streamlined that process.
Yeah.
That's been it for me.
Yeah. So SAISman was a highlight, and it sounds like sophomore year was pivotal in sort of launching that.
Yes.
What else was a highlight for you in high school?
The student council events. It's I say that now because we haven't had prom twice, right? We haven't been able to have events over this COVID period. And so for me, those were highlights, just helping out, going to those formals, those dance nights, and having some fun. I think there needs to be a balance between the work and the enjoyment. And so those were highlights for me.
When you think about teachers that have impacted you significantly, teachers who inspire you, teachers who you can really specifically point to how they supported you to learn and grow, who comes to mind, and what specifically did they do to support you?
Mr. Cals.
Okay.
We've had conversations about Mr. Cals before, but I say that without a doubt because he is. I mean, when I think to Mr. Cals, I think about the words purpose and clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Brings those around wherever he goes. He's made, I mean, in economics class, he's made the targets for the class clear every single class, but he also tried to make those lessons interactive. And we had, for example, we were doing an activity for the macroeconomics unit where we were talking about the circular flow of income, and then we did an activity with buckets pouring water into one another's buckets, and that was interactive, that was fun, and people understood the concept as well. So like that, and so that just made economics a class I genuinely looked forward to in the school day. But beyond that, I've also worked with Mr. Cals in MUN. And I've been able to apply those principles of purpose, clarity, etc., into my leadership. It's questions such as, what was the reason behind why we were doing something? What would others gain out of it? And that really elevated the work we did, both academically as well as in MUN. So at every MUN session, why were we getting the delegates to go through a certain exercise? What was the real purpose behind it?
Who else?
Ooh. The next one, I'm not sure if you can count them as a teacher, but it's Mr. Fuller. So Mr. Fuller was my college counselor.
Yeah.
And he has, I think it's hard to even just describe, put into words the amount of influence that Mr. Fuller has had on me.
Wow.
Because it wasn't just going to Mr. Fuller for university applications. It was sometimes just talking to Mr. Fuller. And so by talking to Mr. Fuller, I was really just able to introspect, identify my own strengths, my shortcomings, and detail my experiences at Stanford. It wasn't always just about, how do I get into this university or what should I do for this next application. It was more about self-reflection, finding yourself. And sometimes we'd go on tangents. I think in grade 11, I would sometimes ask Mr. Fuller, why are we going on these tangents? Why aren't we talking about university admissions? But in reality, he was planting seeds in my brain. And so that was really valuable, because when it came time to send in the apps, I was able to reflect really well on my experiences at Stanford and how those have shaped me and shaped my character.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What are your plans for next year?
My plans for next year. I will be attending the University of California, Berkeley in the US for a simultaneous degree in economics and business administration. So
economics and business?
Yep.
Good. Is Berkeley a good fit for you?
It is. And I also am very happy that I took IB because I get credits off for it.
Well, that is great. That is great.
Yeah.
Kind of where was Berkeley on your list? Was it a school that you really aspired to go to?
Yeah, it was. And there were 3 of them. So that was on the top of my list. So I'm very excited to go there. But
got a great
reputation. I will miss Stanford.
Yeah. No, it's got a great reputation. That's great. So what was your extended essay?
Oh, my extended essay. It was, so I did my extended essay in economics. It was on the Singaporean electricity markets liberalization and the relevant effects on competitive pricing. And so really, it sounds like a mouthful. It sounds like, whoa.
It sounds like a thesis. Yeah.
It actually, it emerged from a dinner conversation I was having with my parents about my electricity usage, because the condo had shifted electricity providers. And so we were talking about like, oh, Akhil, you need to reduce your electricity consumption. And so I was like, this sounds interesting. Why are they paying this much for? So I did some research. And as I did my research, I just, decided that this was going to be my EE topic. And yeah, the rest is history.
And who was your advisor?
Dr. Fernandez.
Okay.
So that was a great experience because I had done AP microeconomics in grade 10. So I had that prior knowledge, and so I wasn't really looking for someone who necessarily knew much about the topic, but it was more about, you know, someone that could keep me on track with the deadlines and outline the process. And that, I mean, Dr. Fernandez did a phenomenal job with that. So
That's great. So what's your advice for advisors? Is it really about deadlines and such?
I think there are some hidden things about the EE in terms of like the way you're supposed to structure your reflections, etc., that sometimes students tend to miss. And so I think the deadlines, obviously, yeah, the deadlines are definitely something that students need to follow. But I think students do a generally a good job of following deadlines. They know when each component is due. I think it's sometimes with the hidden things that students sometimes miss out on that the advisors should then know. And
What's an example of that?
with the reflections, right? So instead of detailing what you've done, you should be talking about what you've learned, what you've gained throughout the EE process.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that.
Okay. How would you describe Stanford culturally? I mean, you started our chat by painting a really lovely picture of a school where there's lots of opportunity, where you feel like you've personally flourished, which is wonderful to hear. Uh, and, you know, we can look at culture from a lot of different perspectives. Everybody, when you have 3,000 students at a school, everybody's going to have a view on how that school looks and feels.
Definitely.
From your perspective, what are some key attributes of Stanford's culture, both positive and maybe not so positive?
Mm-hmm. I think I mean, it's a hard one because, you know, topics such as diversity, equity, inclusion, these are very broad themes, I guess. We do a good job with the diversity, I would like to think, and inclusion. You know, we don't select students based on their scores in the past and things like that. So we're quite inclusive. I do think the club system revamp that we're going to have, that's going to bring in more equity, and that's, you know, very important because one club shouldn't be regarded as higher than another. I know MUN is very popular, Interact is very popular, these are very popular clubs, but there should be other options that students are exposed to as well. I think though that I haven't particularly had too much experience with this, but I feel as if though the PCS community is a bit segregated from the rest of the students.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't particularly seen many PCS students,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I would like to see, I mean, this just comes from me, is grade 12s and seniors, maybe not grade 12s, but high school students interacting with our elementary school students. And we had this one activity in English class, I remember, with Mr. Lambert. This was in grade 10, where we went and read to the KG kids or the grade 1 kids. And so that was a great experience, but we haven't seen a lot of that. And so
I like that idea a lot. That's really good. What about high school students and how they are grouped and cliques, and is their status based on language or cultural identity? Are there students who are more, I mean, do the traditional popular cliques hold at Stanford, or do you see less of that?
I guess they do in some form. There's less of this. Again, I haven't particularly experienced a lot of negative things here at Stanford. But there are definitely cliques. There are definitely groups that you know, are based on ethnicity or based on the language that you speak. But I think Stanford students are generally quite open. I have quite a few friend groups that are not necessarily Indian or you know, Tamil speaking. So I have had a very, I guess, open, diverse experience. But yeah, there are the cliques exist. They will always exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you could change one thing at school, what would it be?
The food delivery policy.
Okay. Say more about that.
That's because students always find a way to get food in either way. So no, students have a strong opinion about that.
About basically having food
Being able
delivered.
to deliver food.
And do they find workarounds?
They do. I mean that, yeah, there are workarounds.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, uh, do you eat in the cafeteria?
I tried it once, but that was about it. I'm vegetarian as well, so
Oh, you are.
one
Okay.
time I tried, I mean, it was in grade 8. The one time I
Oh,
tried it was
wow.
particularly great, but I think it's improved since then. So
So do you bring lunch every day?
every day, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. And do you have siblings?
No, I'm
Oh,
an
you're,
only child.
oh, okay. All right. Um, so what else would you like to share about? Are there any other classes that stood out for you that were highlights in terms of really helping you become a good critical thinker and or artist or anything else, any enrichment classes or anything?
I I've been involved in quite a few extracurriculars since elementary school. I mean, I started playing chess in grade 1.
Hmm.
Um, I've been involved in MUN since grade 4, and so a lot of,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
a lot of these things started very early for me. Um, I mean, you mentioned critical thinking. I think TOK is always a staple to mention there, particularly year 1, when you're introduced to it and you're just like, oh, what is this all about? You know, theory of knowledge. Is this philosophy class? What am I actually going to learn? Um, I think there are a lot of applications to classes and the way we think of these processes, be it the scientific method, the way in which we regard math, and how we come about these rules. You know, like why do angles in a triangle have to be 180 degrees? Again, like it's all created by us. So I think that I had those critical thinking skills, but TOK really helped to develop those. And so
Who did you have for TOK?
Mr. Rod in the first year.
Okay. As you think about Berkeley, what are you most excited about?
Clubs. The clubs. I think the academics are, known in their own regard, but the clubs are what I'm most looking forward to. I do have a friend of mine from childhood who is actually studying there now, and so I'm really looking forward to getting that professional, practical exposure to complement my studies.
So what clubs are you excited about?
The consulting clubs.
Tell me about that.
Well, there are pro bono consulting clubs as well as Fortune 500, etc. And so, what I'm most excited about is really to gain, I guess, expertise and knowledge in that area, because I like engaging with people and talking to people, but then to be able to help them out with their businesses, etc. I think that would be something.
So how is that structured? Do you know?
No idea.
So, but it's an opportunity to actually be engaged in real world
Mhm.
consulting around business.
Yep, they're real clients with real cases and real projects. So
That's very
you end
interesting.
up, yeah.
And undergrads and grads are supporting them in their plans.
Yep.
Really
There are
interesting.
also case competitions where students participate, and so those are all exciting opportunities. Ones that I haven't particularly been exposed to here at Stanford. So yeah, excited.
Are you a competitive person at your core?
You could say that. You could say I am quite competitive, but competitive in the sense that I'm motivated by others, and then competitive in the sense that I want to do better than what I was doing yesterday.
Hmm.
So
So in 15 years, what are you doing? When I
that's
Google
hard.
you, when
That
I
is hard.
Google you in 2036, what am I going to find out?
That is very hard to say. I'm. Who knows? I might be in consulting. I might be in a business. Nobody knows. Only the
Does
future.
public affairs or public policy interest you at all? Or are you more really focused on business?
To an extent, I think there is a sense of that cognizance of world affairs and public affairs that comes with it. But I don't know if I would be in, the government and kind of in the public spotlight, etc. So
Okay. Try to, my encouragement would be to branch out when you get to school, and try to get a taste of different fields as you're able to. I imagine you'll have your core requirements. I'm not sure how Berkeley works, but and it's always helpful at college to ask around, like, who are the dynamo professors, and people will give you recommendations, and that's always really good. I'm sure there's some amazing professors there.
there are.
Yeah, it's super exciting. You're just at the cusp of a really exciting learning adventure. Yeah.
Definitely.
Is there anything else that you would like to share about your Stanford experience, or any feedback for me?
Here's something a lot of people don't know about me. Everyone knows Akhil for MUN, NHS, and chess and all that, but something something that people don't know about me is that I was actually on the Vision 2020 Strategic Planning Task Force. And so even till today, I recall how myself, Dr. Sands, Mr. Rod, Ms. Chumtong, we came up with the vision that stands today. And so when we talk about inspiring students to create their unique future, we're not just referring to the academic pathways, be it IB, AP, BTech, Stanford courses, but it's really about honing in on the diverse passions that each student has. And so that's why I think, with this new revamp of the club system, with integration of PCS students, the way in which the student council is headed, I think we're in great shape, and we should continue to allow students to branch off into different things. And they don't have to be traditional things such as MUN, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about university admissions, we're not looking at a list of, you don't need 1,000 awards or accolades. What you need is a story to tell. And so it's about having meaningful experiences to talk about when you're applying.
Well, I hope when we have alumni events in the future, and you have the opportunity to come back, I hope you will, and share, your Berkeley stories, your reflections. I think you could be a great mentor to younger students, just to inspire them, and have them hear from somebody who's been through Stanford and then gone on to good things in college. I think that could be really helpful. So I encourage you to do that. Open invitation to come back.
I would love to anytime for my juniors.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been really illuminating. I have a lot of respect for you, just in terms of what you've accomplished. It's clear that you've got a tremendous work ethic, that you've been presented opportunities and really, really took those opportunities and ran with them, which I think that's a big differentiator in life. Those who do that tend to really go far. And so I'm just really proud of your successes and grateful for kind of the way that you've engaged in school here and really contributed fully, and both for yourself and for the school's benefit. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing how Stanford evolves over these next few years.
Yeah. Well, good luck, and look forward to seeing you at graduation, okay?
See you then.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.